people typically want a job just because they've done maybe some qualification. 5 crore people graduate every year.
Right.
As a recruiter, it's a recruiter dilemma to basically shortlist based on some
Right.
criteria. Now will you shortlist? Rank or school or some gender or something, and he'll end up doing it.
Right.
You are wondering why outside India, people in history major are portfolio managers, people in political major are portfolio managers, people in liberal arts are portfolio managers, because they are open to do any work.
Right.
You are not open to do any work. You have fixated your mind, boss, I want to only do finance, and within finance, I want to do equity research. As long as you get a foot in the door, you will end up doing everything. And if you're open to end up doing everything, you will get what you want.
Correct.
But if you're only looking for what you want, you will never get anything.
Hello everyone, and thank you so much, sir, to do this.
Thank you.
So, Biharilal Deora is one person that I'm always meeting whenever I'm there in Mumbai, and he makes sure that he finds time for me. So he's a fellow CFA charter holder, and he heads he's the CEO at Abacus Investments, one of the leading PMS houses in the country, and qualified CA, CFA, CFP.
Few more, but he's enough.
Okay. And he's been involved in education. He reviews NISM related books and all. So I was looking at him reviewing the books last time when we met, and you're making corrections in terms of how the curriculum should be for the fund managers. So that's the level at which he is, and always getting the best of advisors. I'll share a couple of things. I think we met about 10-12 years back in one South Indian joint in Kolkata. And then I came to his older office. And I remember we were discussing about reading books and everything. And when we were reading the books, when I was sharing, these books I'm reading, and he's like, yaar, itna to main abhi nahi padh raha. So then I had posted something, I remember, that, you need to compete in the right areas. So not compete as in compete that way, but when we're comparing the number of sitcoms you've seen or what you've bought, and, how many new restaurants you've tried. And that's the kind of things you need to actually, we need to catch up. And then he also told me, tum book padha hai to tum kar kya raha hai? Are you writing on it? Are you going to be able to revisit? Are you posting something about it? Are you educating your students to read? So I remember, and since then I've been posting those screenshots of the books. Yes. So that was one I remember. And Abhi, recently when we were talking, you mentioned about some IT course that you had done way back, early in your career. And it was an expensive course. And us samay wo uska koi use nahi tha. That was not being used in your work. And now when you're looking at the cybersecurity and all these aspects in a PMS house, in a asset management company, and you said how it is coming in handy, that knowledge. And then I wrote and posted somewhere that, referring to you basically, that knowledge does not go waste. You always keep learning. And with the amount of reading, and I always keep on asking him for time management tips. Since I've been in touch with him for the last 10, 12 years or so, almost 10 years, 10, 11 years or so. So always seeking advice, and particularly about your time management.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me for the show. I think, so I'll touch upon the IT course.
Okay.
Back in my good old days, obviously my family shifted to Surat, and there obviously we were all pursuing CA. I was in CA Inter. And that time I thought maybe if I don't want to pursue commerce, and because commerce is kind of by default taken in Marwadi family,
right,
what should I do else, right? And somewhere I think at that time .com had not happened, so IT careers were still in demand. And I thought maybe I should do a hardware and software course in IT, and there used to be an institute called Asset International, owned by Aptech at that point in time.
Okay.
So I did a full-time, course at that point in time without understanding or knowing where it's going to help me at that point in time. And then obviously .com happened, and then I said, "Was apna CA hi bhala hai," get back to your CA at that point in time. And I never thought about it, saying that where this course is going to help me at that point in time. Obviously, it was very different because the way IT professional think is very systematic, very, thought process oriented. And that happened. 20 years fast forward, when I'm, looking at a circular issued by regulator on cybersecurity compliance and system audits, I realized that a lot of the knowledge or the keywords which I'm seeing the circular, I already know them. Right. I mean, even before the circular, since I think 2018, we have been at the forefront in terms of cybersecurity. We have been very, very particular about data confidentiality or, employee access or otherwise. So for us, it was not a new thing. It was not a cultural shock when it came, we have to do so much of security. And then I realized, saying that, look, that knowledge I did 20 years ago suddenly came in handy.
Right.
If you've seen a movie called Martian. There was a
Right.
movie released recently. I mean, it's not a recent movie, maybe 2 years old.
Okay.
But it says that essentially a crew goes to Mars,
Okay.
and then out of within the storm, the plane takes off, and they leave
Mhm.
one crew member behind,
Okay.
right? And that crew member has nothing to eat otherwise, so he grows essentially potatoes
Okay.
out there, and that is because he had taken one class of horticulture or some biology in his college days, and that kind of helped me out in terms of growing those food when he
Okay.
needed the best in Mars, right? And that reminded me of this IT course, saying that no
Okay.
matter what you do, where you do,
Right.
and a lot of people do these, karate, judo, French, and languages and other things. And a lot of times you'll find, why do you think he's doing it?
Right.
But it helps you shape up your mind. It helps
Right.
you, come in handy.
The mental models,
the
the
mental
cognitive development.
So it always helps you.
Right.
You may not realize it, but at some point in time it will come handy, right? So if you've learned swimming, even if after 20 years you swim, you'll still know swimming.
Yes.
If you learn bicycling, even if you don't drive it anymore, if you need it,
So I use
it'll come in
those
handy.
examples, जैसे वो bond yield curve that we have. So concave, convex mirror से I try to bring that. Okay, this is the shape and this is how you look at the graph. It always comes in handy. But this potato one, I hope my mother does not see this part, because then she'll start pushing me, because I have zero skills at home.
It was the right example at that
Right.
point in time. And
Right.
and it college sent him an email saying that you have colonized Mars because
Okay.
you've grown vegetable over there. So
Okay.
he had
Interesting.
done it.
So everybody talks about the investment part when we're looking at a asset management company, when we're looking at the PMS houses. So there is a lot more that goes beyond equity research and investments per se. So we understand the buy side, we understand the sell side, we talk about equity research, we talk about investment banking. I want to actually touch upon the areas and the aspects, the verticals, the departments, the entire support team beyond that. And especially when we're looking at the sales force being a huge
Yeah.
number adding to the house. So want to understand, one, the business model part of how the AMC runs, and two, the verticals, the departments, and what are the work profiles and how and what is done in order to shape up the whole thing and run the whole show. So let's start with the business model. So how does it work? Basically, there is an AUM.
So typically an AMC, think of AMC as some sort of manufacturer.
Okay.
They are manufacturing a product,
Right.
right? It's a financial product, a PMS or a fund or AIF or a mutual fund,
Mhm.
that matter. But think of it as a manufacturer,
Right.
right? In a manufacturing setup, you need 3-4 things. You need, capital. You need, so in AMC side, you need performance, you need people, you need process, and you
Right.
need systems and other things. Now, performance, you might have track record, you might not have track record. Markets might be in your favor, might not be in your favor. People obviously are the key element to it. But I always tell this to my team and to other fellow charter holders, saying that the maximum amount of value that a CFA charter holder can do is not in investment process.
Then.
It's process other than investments.
Okay.
Which forms part of investment process. So when people see that, okay, your stock has performed so and so, what goes behind it in terms of compliance, in terms of operation, in terms of sales, in terms of product, that is where I think the actual value is. Now, why do I say so? Now, a charter holder is in a unique position to understand everything about investments.
Right.
Okay. At the same time, someone who is in operations or in product role or in sales role or in any other fund accounting role, he knows only about that particular function, but he doesn't have the overall context. Right. Now, let's say if you are a charter holder and if you are working on a product presentation, okay, designing a pitch to be given to your investors, right? If you are someone who follows the ethics day in, day out, you will understand saying that I should not be making any statements which are misrepresenting.
Correct.
Or I should not be kind of guaranteeing any performance.
Correct.
Or otherwise. Now, even before the presentation goes for a compliance check, he already knows these things. Right. And he will kind of frame it in those ways, saying that he's not misrepresenting things. Similarly, if you are in compliance, the problem with compliance people is that they know compliance, but they don't understand investments. So a lot of times they will sign off on things without understanding the substance or basis of it. Right. And if you know the substance in terms of investment process, in and out, saying that nobody can make you fool out of it, right? If the investment manager is saying something or if the client is saying something, saying that, okay, this is how the investment process works. Right. Now, the other thing is regulations may not be very clear at all points in time. I mean, it's not exactly black and white. Wherever it is black and white, it is black and white. But a lot of places, the situations are not envisaged in the regulation. And when those situations comes in, you'll have to sort of take a stand in terms of how do you address those situations. You don't want to do anything wrong, but at the same time, you want to also adhere to your code, right? So the way of thinking, or the way is I call it a regulatory mindset or an ethics mindset, which allows you to sort of, frame in any situation and come up with a solution which works for all parties. Okay. I'll give you a very small example. Again, very generic example. When you are raising a fund, typically you raise funds through these placement agents or,
Right.
so-called distributors. Now, when you raise a fund, most of, these players who are helping you raise money will also be part of some multinational or, multi kind of conglomerate groups which have brokerages also, broking side and investment banking side and other side, right?
Right.
And they will typically end up asking you to basically empanel their other sister concerns to say that, look, why don't you give brokerage business also to our firm or custody business to our
Particularly
firm?
the banks. So banks having a securities.
It could be banks, it could be non-banks, but largely
Right.
anyone who has a sister concern business.
Right.
Typically, when you are raising money,
Right.
and because you are dependent on them for raising money, it's hard to say no.
Yes.
Right? So you can't say no.
Right.
And you also know saying that, look, if you trade it through them, if you take, let's say, deals through them, maybe investment banking, or if you do any other business with them, there could be a possibility where they have access to information which, in absence of Chinese wall, can be used for their clients,
Right.
which may not be ethically valid.
Right.
Regulatory wise, they don't have any challenges because they are different teams and other things. But it's a hypothetical conflict which you might arise, right? So how do you do it? If in a normal sense, you will either say yes, in which case everything goes ahead. In either case, you say no, in which case you spoil the relationship.
Right.
The middle path is, you try to convince them saying that, look, we can, empanel you, but we'll only start trading after the fundraising is done.
Okay.
So that there is no conflict. So in between, when they're raising funds, they shouldn't know what the fund has already bought or sold, right?
Right.
Now, those kind of situations are not very clear in regulation.
Correct.
Right? And neither you will be able to find these things. And that's where your CFA mindset will come into picture. So see what is written in, let's say, an AIF regulation, PMS regulation, RIA regulation, everybody knows.
Right.
What regulation comes out by looking at 5 different regulations is where the value is, right? As charter holders or maybe as chartered accountants or most professionals for that matter, how are you trained? You are trained to consume large amounts of data,
right,
large amount of information,
right,
and give a conclusion or remarks or a thesis to investors in short.
Right.
What does a religious leader does? What does your prime minister does? Or what does your political leader does? He tries to basically give a right message to the audience despite consuming so much of audience. So I'm saying if you're trained that way, no matter which area you go to, I mean, in investment also, you will deal with structured, unstructured information and you will have to end up taking a decision, right? Your variables may be right, your variables might be wrong. The same goes in other aspects, right? So in investments, you are anyway competing with other chart holders, right? Because everyone wants to become a portfolio manager at that point,
absolutely.
Right? But I would say investment is maybe 50% of what an organization does.
Right.
The remaining 50% is what the other functions are, right? Which have a lot of reputation risk in terms of if they go wrong, organizations could go haywire. I mean, and you've seen the list of penalties. I mean, I've seen businesses where out of one small mistake of, let's say, insider trading or some other thing, organizations are closed down.
Correct.
Right? Or investors are pulled out.
And a lifetime of reputation goes for a toss.
So it takes 20-30 years for a portfolio manager to make his reputation and performance and everything.
True.
But if you don't have competent people in the other parts of the organization, it can get ruined very fast.
Right. So the support becomes very important. But I've seen students at times having a challenge, or working professionals as well, where they have a resilience. And particularly even if you're studying finance or whatsoever subject you study, even if it is a non-commerce background or something, there is a resilience towards learning something new or learning or trying to update oneself in some new area. So for example, even if somebody is, let's say, a pharma manager, for example, pharma funds or something, they will have to go through FDA regulations. So if you're working in a finance space, the regulations pertaining to finance. If you're working in an export-import business, you'll have to learn the Forex-related regulations and RBI laws and all. So similarly, so how does one get into acquiring a skill set or studying or upgrading in another domain of subject, wherein their formal education, say for example, somebody study finance. So how do you end up updating yourself or understanding regulations?
So it's a chicken and egg. Regulation keeps on updating. You may or may not know everything, right? And you may not have context to do everything. So one practice which I follow and I also encourage my team to follow is to look at the recent regulatory orders which have been passed.
Okay.
So every day you go to website, the first thing in the morning when you switch on your PC, you should have an auto tab populated saying that, okay, this is the current orders today.
Okay.
Right? And the order history, essentially, you don't have to read everything. I mean,
Just
go through 1 or 2 orders. It could be, some inspection order. It could be some insider trading order. It could be something else. But try and go through the logic at which regulator is arguing something and at which the entity is responding. And try and make sense that whether it was clear to regulator that it was a violation and whether it was clear to entity that it was a violation.
So it's a preemptive way of not getting under the scrutiny in order to, that leads to a major loss.
So essentially, look, by default, we are all compliant people. Right? By default, we all want to comply. We are God-fearing people and we don't want to break laws. Right? So majority of the places, whether if such thing has happened, it could be either a process gap or it could be an understanding gap. And both the things you can kind of, control or recoup within your organization by looking at these orders. Right? So similar to what they say that if you read a autobiography, in 300 rupees, you are getting value of 20 years of someone's experience.
Yes, 100%.
Right? The same thing, if you read an order, you are getting, a full insight of, like, it's like a, consulting, from regulator for free, saying that don't do these things or do these things, right? So reading always helps. Now, you might argue saying that, look, only financial reading might help or only other reading might help. I met one of the large portfolio managers in New York. And he has been kind of managing large sums of money. It's a very, very large private equity firm.
Okay.
And the one thing he told me, that he has not missed a single issue of Economist since 1978.
Okay.
So Economist comes out every month or maybe every week or whatever that frequency is. But since 1978, when he started working, he has been reading Economist since then. Right? Now, Economist might be expensive in India and stuff like that. But his point is DD has continued and inculcated that habit of
consistency.
Reading, right? Now, sometimes what you read in, Economist or some other magazine for that matter, might happen at a later date, might click at a later date, but at least you are able to view the opinions of people, right?
And
that's what will matter.
That's what will trail of how things have been since 1978.
So the whole thing is you've seen cycles.
Right.
You've seen how media has changed. You've seen how things go wrong and how things go right? And you don't blindly believe on blue sky scenario if a management is presenting it, right? That will help. Now, it's not necessary that you only read financial books, right? Like in cricket, you've seen that, when Team India won recently the World Cup, they might be practicing 5 hours cricket. But for remaining 1 or 2 hours, their coach will ask him to practice, let's say, football or, swimming or some other sport. Because the amount of bonding and the value they will get or the skill set they will improve. Cricket, they already know. They already have been practicing for ages.
And also the mental models. So when you're studying different disciplines and getting more perspective about different things, the mental models and the way to think, the way to apply a thought process from one discipline into
another
finance or to somewhere else.
It could be, you will see a lot of people give examples of movies, a lot of people give examples of songs. My favorite is Bhagavad Gita, where you can read a lot of these stuff. And, now, you may not understand it at that point in time, but somewhere it'll hit you saying that, 100%. Look, this is what was it.
Decision making. 100%. Right? And especially ethical decision making where there is a confusion about what's right and wrong and there's no clear answer. Because I always get my answers through the Gita.
And most of the times, you will wait for clarity to act. Okay? But the way to get clarity is by acting.
I read
right or wrong.
Right
or wrong. But you will have to act somewhere. Right?
Yes.
And then analyze the decision saying that, okay, what you did was wrong, right, etc., etc. And then go from there, right? And that can only happen if you share knowledge. So, for example, if you read a book, you got that knowledge.
Right.
But by talking to others about the same thing, by writing to others about the same thing, you will get something different. You'll get a different perspective, right?
Yes.
If you are looking for a job, people typically want a job just because they've done maybe some qualification, CFAC or anything. But because you are in a country where 5 crore people graduate every year.
Right.
Okay. So as a recruiter, it's a recruiter dilemma to basically shortlist based on some criteria. And how will you shortlist? Rank or school or some gender or something, and he'll end up doing it. Right. You are wondering why outside India, people in history major are portfolio managers, people in political major are portfolio managers, people in liberal arts are portfolio managers, because they are open to do any work. Right. You are not open to do any work. You have fixated your mind, boss, I want to only do finance, and within finance, I want to do equity research, right?
True. There's a mental block.
And 10-15 years later, it's not about your skill set. It's about your management style. It's about you become a project manager.
Right.
Whatever project is given to you, be it investment banking, be it sales of a company, be it treasury, be it equity, be it fixed income, you will deliver. Because the skill set or understanding required to deliver that is same. Right? As long as you get a foot in the door, you will end up doing everything. And if you're open to end up doing everything, you will get what you want.
Correct.
But if you're only looking for what you want, you will never get
everything. True, 100%.
Right? That's the whole story. And it doesn't matter, by the way. If you are thinking, saying that, look, I am in this city or that city, or this is my background and that is my background. But your limitations are where you start, not where you end. Your limitations which you made, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years ago has nothing to do with, what you're doing right now. Right? I mean, when I grew up, I didn't have access to Google. I didn't have access to phone. I didn't have so much of career guidance with respect to what people are doing. But now you have.
Right?
Now you have platforms like LinkedIn or otherwise where you can write every day.
Yes.
Right? You must have heard of an author called Morgan Housel.
Yes.
He's written a couple of books, Psychology of Money and otherwise.
Same as Ever was also amazing.
So, if you look at his profile, he's a bachelor in arts. Okay.
I didn't read that.
Okay. Now, obviously, you will see that he's a partner at Collaborative Fund or something.
Right.
But, you know what he has done? In last 10 years, you've seen that, okay, he has got 2-3 articles in New York bestseller and stuff like that. But what you have not read is that in last 10 years of his first 10 years of his career, he wrote 4,000 blogs. Now, 10 years hypothetically would be 3,652 days, including the leap years. And in those 3,652 days, he wrote 4,000 blogs. Okay, so more than one blog a day. Okay, now out of 4,000 blogs, if 4 blogs or 10 blogs have become New York bestseller or the most read after, but you are only seeing those 4. You're not seeing the 4,000, and those 4,000 blogs have made him a partner at. I mean, I'm sure he has done other things also.
Of course.
But I'm saying, look, someone from a non-finance background knows what to work hard and come there. Someone from finance background is not doing.
And the practice and consistency that brings together in the books that he has written, and it's amazing. Actually, the books are brilliant.
Now you feel the books are
absolutely.
And there is a famous book called Outliers. Malcolm Gladwell.
Yes.
I had a privilege of meeting Malcolm Gladwell back in 2012. He was speaking at a event in Credit Suisse in Hong Kong. I used to be in Credit Suisse at that point in time.
Right.
And obviously, in-person meeting is a different story than, But essentially, he says that you look at any successful person, you look at Mozart, you look at his, earlier creations, you look at any of them. What you know is that Bill Gates designed this system and so on and so age. What you don't know is that prior to that system, for 8-9 years, he was sitting at public library, accessing computer every day for 6 to 9, like 3 hours a day.
So the media romanticizes the dropout story, but not the hard work behind it for any of the people.
And the same thing goes for you. The same thing goes for, what you are doing right now, right? You have time, you have resources, you have, 90% of the people, they want an opportunity.
Right.
They want someone to pay them for the opportunity.
Right.
And they want someone to spoon feed them with the knowledge, right? The problem is, we are living in a place where we have problem of plenty. Okay? Plenty of people are available. So if plenty of people are available, why would I waste my time in training someone who doesn't know it? Right? People say that I'm passionate about equity research. Well, how do you prove you are passionate about equity research? If I ask you, are you passionate about the Game of Thrones? And you will say yes, and you can talk about the entire series and characters and everything. If you're passionate about cricket, you will know the entire statistics. If you're passionate about finance, you don't even know what the level of GSEC 10-year yield is for RBI.
Right.
So how is that very different from a passion which you follow in sports and other places and a passion in finance? Right? When you, as my partner Sunil says it, when you are passionate about equity, you eat, live, breathe equity.
True.
Okay? But that is not evident from a lot of these,
because they start looking at a work-life balance even before their work has started. So you start consuming all these things online and then it goes for a toss. Totally it goes for a toss.
English was not that great. So in those days, you used to have these 1-800 toll-free numbers.
Okay.
Right. So we thought that in order to improve our English, we should call up these toll-free numbers. Because one, you will not pay cost. Second, because you are their client, they are not going to negate you. They are going to only encourage you in talking. That's how I did. But anyway, so fast forward, I'm saying,